and welcome to this online workshop titled How to Properly Manage Your Urban Forest in a Time of Drought. My name is Shani Alford, and I am with the Local Government Commission. We have the exciting opportunity to partner with the California Urban Forest Council to host this timely online workshop thanks to funding provided by the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. This online workshop is the first in a series of online workshops that we have rolled out this month in anticipation for the 2015 CAL FIRE Urban and Community Forestry Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund grants. Our goal with these online workshops is to provide meaningful information to local governments and disadvantaged communities in the San Joaquin Valley who are seeking to gain a better understanding of the available funding, the tools that are available to assist local governments preparing for the grants, and additional technical assistance support that is available. Our dynamic team consists of staff from the California Urban Forest Council, the Local Government Commission, including 3 talented members from the CivicSpark AmeriCorps program team located in the San Joaquin Valley. I would like to turn it over to a representative from CivicSpark to talk briefly about the program and their role in supporting local governments in the San Joaquin Valley who are interested in applying for these grants. Tommy?
Thank you, Shani. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tommy Ta, and on behalf of my other CivicSpark team members, I just wanted to quickly introduce to you all what the CivicSpark program is and how we are involved with the CAL FIRE Urban Forestry grant. CivicSpark is an AmeriCorps program from Governor Brown's initiative dedicated to building capacity for local governments to address environmental related issues in California such as drought, energy efficiency, or urban forestry. The CivicSpark program is administered by the Local Government Commission in partnership with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. There are 48 CivicSpark members. Some are recent graduates and others just passionate about helping local governments address environmental issues, serving different regions across the state for an 11-month term. Our San Joaquin Valley team consists of 6 members, 3 of whom are working to promote urban forestry and assist local governments and agencies with their CAL FIRE grant applications. Members are able to connect interested parties with urban forestry resources, engage in project planning, acquire data for grant applications, and provide educational outreach in your community. If you're interested in utilizing the free services of our CivicSpark members, please feel free to contact the CivicSpark CAL FIRE team, and Elizabeth and Shani has our contact information. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Tommy. Before we get started, I want to go over a few logistics. So we're going to go to the next slide. So everyone will be muted except the person speaking. Due to the number of participants, we ask that you type your questions, comments into the question box. We'll be summarizing these questions during the Q&A portion following the presentations. Any of the questions we don't get to, we'll ask the presenters to respond to after the online workshop, and we will make the responses available on our website. So we'll move on to reviewing of today's agenda. As you all know, figuring out how to manage our current urban forests as we deal with the impacts of the drought has raised many challenges. We are excited to have 2 experts with us today who will be providing strategies on how local governments can effectively manage their urban forests. We will hear an update on the Governor's executive drought order, examples of how communities around the state are adjusting to these new mandates, and additional resources available to communities. Our first speaker is Julie Saare Edmonds. Julie is a senior environmental scientist with the California Department of Water Resources, specializing in landscape water use efficiency and green building for over 14 years. She has been involved in 2 updates of the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, written publications, and helped design an award-winning landscape exhibit for the California State Fair. She has degrees in biological conservation and horticulture. Julie is a UCCE Master Gardener and a long-term volunteer for the Boy Scouts of America. Now we'll turn it over to Julie.
Hi there. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
okay,
we can
great.
hear you.
Good, good. Okay, so, you know, this is kind of such a huge topic, so I hope I've gathered some information that will be helpful for you. So I'm going to start off with a picture of a landscape down in, I think in Camarillo or somewhere in that area where they had installed a dry stream bed to capture whatever rain they do get. And that would flow through the landscape and soak into the ground. And so that's something that a lot of us should be thinking about. I actually have already installed this kind of thing in my yard. So that's one way we can capture rain and keep it in the soil where we need it. So next slide. Okay, so there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of hype and a lot of worried thoughts and things going on about the drought. And these are some of the things that I kind of threw together that I've heard, that why we're in a drought and also how people are reacting to it. So we're in a drought because we had low rainfall and snowfall over several winters, because dry summers are normal for us. So that's not the drought. It's the lack of precipitation in these last several winters that have caused our storage to be so low. And also the low rainfall and snowfall has caused a winter deficit in trees, because they've undergone long-term stress because they're even too dry in the winter. So they're suffering because of the actual drought. And then you add on water restrictions and they're not getting any summer irrigation, and then we see our forest going downhill. A lot of people originally were saying, I don't use that much, I don't need to cut back, so they were very resistant on cutting back and saving water in their landscaping, because they didn't understand that they use probably half to 3/4 of their water outside. They could not imagine that. There's a lot of mixed messages originally, especially in the first year or so, where some regions were not as seriously impacted. So there was some talk that my region's not in a drought, I don't need to do anything. And a lot of people were concerned that their HOA or the city would fine them if they did not water enough. Okay, next slide. And, you know, there's always the blame game, unfortunately. You know, one group says it's the farmer's fault, another group says it's the environmentalist's fault, another group says it's industry. So unfortunately, that gets out there, but I think we're all in such a serious situation now after 4 years that I think the blaming has kind of gotten old, and we've moved back beyond that. A lot of people worry that not watering enough would ruin their property value or decrease their businesses. People are thinking, oh, it's going to end, we don't need to worry, it'll, you know, but maybe it won't, maybe it'll last another year. And now with all the El Nino hype on all the news stations, you know, it seems to be a big one forming, but that's no guarantee that we will get a lot of rain and snow in Northern California, where we really need it for our storage. And the end result is a lot of people are saying my trees are dying. Okay, next slide. So I was going to talk about the executive order on April 1st. Well, I guess I'll step back a couple years. Or last January of last year, the governor declared it was a drought emergency after a year or so, a couple years of dry winters. And then in April of last year, he continued the drought declaration. And this April, he went up to do the snow survey with the DWR snow surveyors, in anticipation of the fact that they knew there was no snow where there normally is, you know, quite a bit of snow even as late as April. So he took that opportunity to declare some findings and give an executive order. And there's quite a few parts to the order directed at different agencies and entities. But the ones that DWR paid most attention to is he called for a statewide reduction of water use about 25%, which is weighted. So in areas where they've already done a lot of conservation or they're already using less, you know, they don't have to reduce as much. So in some places it was quite a bit higher than 25% because their water use per person was quite high. And this included all the commercial, industrial, and institutional sites and campuses like college campuses and golf courses were included in that. DWR was also ordered to lead a statewide initiative to replace, put in a program to replace 50 million square feet of lawns. And he had also ordered no potable water use on street medians. Next slide. Any new irrigation at new homes and buildings with potable water must be drip or microspray delivered. And you know, a lot of people in the industry, in the irrigation industry, were worried about that microspray because it can be very high water using. So we defined microspray using a national standard for irrigation equipment, and so that kind of took away some of the mystery and concern. Water suppliers must report, as they have been, to the State Water Board monthly on the water use in their service area. Another thing that the governor ordered to DWR specifically is that we were tasked with updating the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. Okay? Next slide. All right. So I mentioned the turf replacement initiative. This is the website. It's building daily. There's a lot of good information on it right now, and we have an intern who's actually adding things to this daily. Even for people who don't intend to get a rebate or request a rebate, there's still quite a bit of information with landscaping and gardening information specific to regions. So I encourage anybody to go look and go through I think it's the plant information on the right. I'm not sure if it's showing up on this slide. But anyway, the rebate information will be coming soon, and these are rebates available to residents and businesses throughout the state. Okay? And so this is the main thing that I've been involved in for the last few months. We were ordered in April to do this, and we really got underway in May. We did a lot of stakeholder outreach with the landscape industry and others. And so knowing the history kind of helped guide that. So in 1990, AB 325 was the first landscape the first Water Conservation Act and landscaping that was passed. And an ordinance came from that with stakeholder input, and it's been in effect since 1993. It wasn't very well used in many places. It was ignored because at that time, cities and counties could exempt themselves by stating that they had an adequate supply. In 2009, we were ordered to update it again, and cities were no longer given that option because that really isn't the case. Nobody has so much water that they can use it inefficiently and wastefully. So all cities and counties were required to adopt either the state model or a local version. They could not exempt themselves. The extreme drought conditions have brought on this current update, and you know, we don't know. There's no sunset clause in the ordinance, so we don't know how long, if the ordinance will ever be changed again back. You know, I doubt it. It's possible, but we don't know if the water budget and other provisions will be changed back after the drought is ended, because we don't know when the drought will end. So one of the main factors in the update is that the water budget has been decreased, placing a larger emphasis on trees and shrubs, and not so much on turf grasses. Although turf is not banned because it is a water budget based on plant water use, and if you use turf uses a certain amount of water and you just put it into the budget. If you use a low water using turf grass, then it uses even less water and you can have more. So it's not a direct ban on turf by any means. It's just a water budget approach. However, the water budget was decreased, so there is less space in a budget for lots and lots of lawn. We do not emphasize any non-living elements. We don't think extra concrete or artificial turf are the way to go to save water. We think that living plants have so many environmental benefits that we should promote living plants and landscapes that save water. We just need to choose the right plants and irrigate them correctly. Next slide. So these are the 5 items that the governor explicitly called out in the executive order that we need to focus on. We did do quite a few changes that stakeholders asked for, but these are the most important from our point of view. We had to change some provisions to increase the efficiency in irrigation systems. We had to promote gray water reuse, promote stormwater capture, which actually was in the original ordinance, but we did try to go a little bit farther this time. And we were also tasked with reducing the amount of turf grass in new landscapes, which I mentioned we did that through the water budget approach. So it's not that turf is banned, it's just it cannot be a majority type of plant in a landscape, unless there are special circumstances for like sports fields and other public assembly areas and so on, and those are special landscape or recreation areas, and they're set aside. They still have a good water budget, adequate water budget. So there is no attack on parks or sports fields by any means. And the 5th thing that is, I think, very important to us is, for the first time, the local agencies will have to report on the implementation. And this is important because in the past, we've never had any idea how many landscapes went in every year, how much acreage that encompassed, and how much water they were using. And so by having the local agencies report this annually, we will have a good idea, and that will be a very helpful thing for future water planning. Next slide. So some of the things that we've been doing to try to help deal with the drought and keep landscaping alive and functioning the way it should is we've been, through drought funding, we've been able to fund many workshops. We've had a series going of about 100 workshops throughout the state for homeowners and quite a few others for professional levels. We've partnered with California Urban Water Conservation Council, UC Davis, the California Native Plant Society, G3, Eco Landscape, and other groups to provide these workshops either for free or a very low cost. I don't think any of them have cost more than $20, and that's basically just to cover minor expenses. And we are still offering workshops. We have some funding that has not been expended, so if any water supplier or city or county wants to offer a homeowner level workshop, and it can be on water efficient landscaping, it can be on rainwater capture systems, it can be for gray water systems. So anything that will help capture more water and make landscapes more efficient and healthy and have multiple benefits would qualify. Just contact this water use efficiency at water. It's a WUE@water.ca.gov for information, or you can email me directly, and I'll give you my email at the end. Next slide. Here's a picture of a workshop we held in Roseville in last year, and we had nearly 200 people come to this workshop. Almost all of them were landscape professionals or master gardeners or students of horticulture, and we went throughout the whole state and put on nearly 20 of these workshops with this kind of attendance. So they made a big impact, I think. And we've got one coming up in Sacramento in a couple weeks. I don't know if there's any space left, but if you want to find out, just email me later. Next slide. So a lot of us are here because we're worried about tree survival. And actually, this was on our radar beginning last year when we were planning that workshop that I showed a picture of just a moment ago. In all of the workshops, we had over 14 throughout California, Northern and Southern California partnered with UC Davis and MARIN Irrigation Company. And we always had a segment and a speaker who specialized in tree survival and irrigating trees. So we have been working with the landscape industry for over a year to get that message out that trees, you know, even if there's a cutback on lawn irrigation, the trees need to have some irrigation either by hose, quick connect, whatever it takes. And last fall, we worked with UC Davis, Sac Tree Foundation, and others, and we had some news conferences here locally in Sacramento and some media alerts and articles that went statewide and got a lot of traction. So we've been, you know, trying our best and hoping that it has made a difference. And I know at the State Fair this year we had some extra Save Our Water, Save Our Trees type of information that the public was very concerned about, and I heard from our exhibit workers that that was a very popular topic. People were very worried, and I'm glad it is. I'm not glad that the situation is this, but I'm glad that people are taking notice and trying to do something about it. And recently, Urban Relief and Save Our Water have become connected, and they have gotten some great messaging out for statewide urban forest values and how important it is to save our trees. Next slide. So you've probably seen this logo on the Save Our Water and Save Our Trees. And here, this is another great little resource over at UC Davis. A couple of the guys over there, Dave Fugino and Lauren Oakey, came up with this tree ring irrigation contraption, and it's a real simple way to put in a temporary or even a permanent irrigation system for trees using just inline dripper hose. So that's a really good, easy thing you can send people to. Next slide. Okay, that's it. So this is the other view of that landscape I showed at the beginning. And it's down, I think Camarillo or somewhere. Anyway, I was there. I just can't remember what city it was in. But you can see when we got out of the car, we went actually to a water conservation festival that was across the street at a public park. And when we got out of the car, the fragrance of these plants, you had Cleveland sage and some other very fragrant plants, it just hits you like this wonderful smell that you smell at the ocean of clean air and herby plants. And so I think as time goes by, we'll see more of these that look more like the natural California than. And it's probably a very good thing. The only thing I would say is he doesn't have enough trees. So if you need to reach me, here's my contact, my email, and my phone number. So please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or want additional information.
Thanks, Julie. Our next speaker is Dan Carney. Dan has managed the MARIN Municipal Water District's conservation programs since 2006 and helped create the Water Conservation Plan, Master Plan for MARIN, a conservation strategy for the next 20 years. He earned his MBA in Sustainable Enterprise from Dominican University School of Business in 2011 and graduated from the Cal Poly Pomona School of Environmental Design and Landscape Architecture in 1994. He and his wife, Nancy, are enthusiastic organic farmers and live in Novato with 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 4 chickens. Wow, Dan, you got a full house there. So I'll turn it over to Dan now.
Oh, thank you so very much. And I wanted to thank Julie too for the amazing job that she and everybody in Sacramento does managing the state and trying to balance all the different situations and priorities that vary so much throughout the state. So incredible work, and thank you very much. It helps us at a local level so much to have that kind of leadership. So I would like to expand on a couple of topics that Julie touched on. One is probably most importantly are the benefits of living plants, and particularly trees, and in particular also the messaging. And what I hope to be able to do is share probably a lot of these concepts you already have, are familiar with, and maybe a couple of facts I'll throw out there are some new ideas for you. But I know working here at the local level, I get calls and emails all day long from folks that are so concerned about the drought, and particularly their landscape and their trees. Maybe they've let their lawns die on purpose, but the trees have been benefiting from the irrigation of the lawns. And the message I'm constantly trying to get out to them is, please take care of the trees, because there are so many benefits. And on this first slide, there are some obvious ones, the benefits in the community, where this was taken here in MARIN in San Rafael on a very, very hot summer day, but this particular street was 25 degrees cooler than the surrounding because of these wonderful mature street trees. You can see how it encourages people to bike and exercise and get out. And one of the less obvious things that I've been really fascinated with is the temperature. We've all heard of the heat island effect and how trees mitigate that. But all those cars on the street are venting volatile organic compounds from their gas tanks. It turns out to be a huge part of ground level ozone, which is the major component of smog. And I'll show you some kind of scary statistics a little bit later. But some of the studies that National Health Institutes have done shows that for every 18 degrees increase in temperature, some of these volatile organic compounds are doubled in terms of the amount that are released just sitting there on the street. So temperature is very important, and that's one of the less obvious things that these trees are providing. So next slide, please. And I love this. Trees, this particular fellow was around, for more than 1,000 years, and what a great record of the ups and downs of rainfall. And we can see that in the record here, survive, for all these years until it was cut down, obviously, but it really shows the variation over this very, very long, millennium period. Next slide, please. And this shows 119 years, which is a little closer to a lifetime period. All of us were born within this period of time. And there's some interesting information in this graph that I'd like to talk about for just a second. If you look at, this is the rainfall throughout California since, early, 1800 or late 1800s. If you look at the yellow line, which is the average, the moving average throughout time, and you look during the period from 1900s, say, till 1940, you can see that the average was way below the overall average for the whole, the dotted black line for the whole period of time. And then if you look from 1940s on, say, till about 2000, you see that average, we got much more rainfall. And so the lesson I take away from this is, our cities were built during this period of time of relative rainfall abundance. All of our water projects were built during this time. We were all born during this time. We're used to having a relatively high amount of average rainfall on a historical basis. Again, if you look even just 100 years, or certainly if you go 1,000 years, this has been an unusually wet period, and it looks like now 2014 was the third driest year out of 119 years. Who knows, but we may be going into, again, a prolonged period of less average rainfall, which is actually more normal on a historical basis. Next slide, please. So what do the climate scientists say? This is from 2008, but I think it could be from today. What were the predictions? Well, are they coming true? I think so. A couple of the things to point out here: increased reliance on groundwater for basic supply. Certainly more flashy events. We don't, I know here in MARIN we've been saved the last 2 years in terms of our reservoir levels just because of rainfall. 2 events a year in December and January have filled our reservoirs. Very, very unusual, and I know it's certainly true all over California and much of the world. So this climate variability, as we've all heard, may be here to stay for quite a while. Our next slide, please. And so I have a few scary slides here, and then we'll get to the good news. One of the things that is a result of kind of misapplication of irrigation, if you will, as Julie pointed out, during this time where we're all being asked to cut back by 25% irrigation of our landscapes, our urban landscapes is one of the major areas we can do it. As you probably all know, over-irrigation is one of the most common practices in the profession and in people's homes. You know, whether it's a lawn or a tree or shrubs, people have been vastly over-irrigating, and that carries some very significant, that causes some very significant environmental problems in all of our creeks and our bays all over the state. So rain or shine, whether we come out of this drought next year or not, this is a really important lesson for us all to learn. And Julie talked about water budgets and how the landscape water budget ordinance is being tightened up a little bit. And from my point of view, I hope that never goes away, because it's a good idea all the time to be careful with our water use and keep our landscapes healthy. Next slide, please. So another scary slide. This is about a month old now, but certainly illustrates what we all know. The redder it is, the drier it is, and our forests and our landscapes, our urban and wildland areas are feeling it. Fires all over the state. So this is not any new news, but we don't know if it's going to change. Next slide. And one of the predictions was that we were going to rely more heavily on groundwater. This is, I think, fascinating that NASA has found a way to predict or measure the amount of groundwater using satellite imagery and changes in the gravitational field of the Earth, and certainly the predictions of the climate scientists have come true, and we're in very deep trouble in terms of the depths of our wells having to be extended farther and farther and depleting those groundwater resources. So will there ever be good news? Next slide, please. Yes, this is our secret weapon here, chlorophyll, and all of the benefits that trees bring. This is a slide, doesn't resemble anywhere, you know, mostly in California, but from Portland, but just to illustrate how a healthy, vigorous tree is not only beautiful, but epitomizes all of the environmental benefits that come from a living landscape. Next slide. So, you know, the science on carbon storage and how trees contribute to that just keeps growing. I know here in MARIN there's a project called the MARIN Carbon Project, which has been using compost added to rangelands in very small amounts, actually like an inch thick on the soil, and it has increased the carbon storage in those soils by invigorating the living material in the soil by 25 to 50%. You can get a tremendous amount of carbon storage, which of course contributes to removing greenhouse gases that are contributing to the heating effect. And trees, you know, here in this slide from is showing that, you know, 80 tons per acre of carbon can be sequestered through the combination of living trees and healthy soil. Next slide, please. And again, this is probably known to all of you, but just in terms of talking points, I know I frequently go to this kind of information when people are asking about these benefits, and, you know, why should I you know, why should I spend water on my tree? I've even had people talk about putting in plastic trees, which is pretty shocking to me, but it kind of makes sense to them. Many people who aren't you know, the part of the choir, if you will, the environmental choir, really have not been exposed to these things, and I find that every day, even with, you know, a very educated public, that these talking points, even though they're very familiar to probably all of us on the call, are new, and maybe the first time people have heard it. And I like to look at the different values, because obviously people respond to different things. Some people are more interested in their home value, and if you've got like that one slide with the street trees, beautiful street trees, we know that that increases the value of everyone's home. Other people are more concerned, you know, about the air pollutants, and we talked about ozone, or their businesses. It's well documented that businesses, you know, flourish when they have beautiful landscaping, and particularly nice shade trees. People want to come back and stay longer. So again, having these different pieces of the pie, there's bound to be one or another angle that people will respond to, and, you know, some wonderful work, if you aren't familiar with it, by Dr. McPherson and others at the Pacific Southwest Research Station in Davis. Fantastic tools and information there that really quantifies and gets very specific about these benefits. Next slide, please. This is the last real scary slide. I wanted to come back to the ozone piece, and we think of ozone in the upper atmosphere as being a good thing, which it is because it shields us from ultraviolet light. But on the ground, it's the primary component of smog, and has tremendous health impacts and negative health impacts. So this particular study by the Union of Concerned Scientists, the bottom line here is that for every degree of Fahrenheit increase in temperature let's say on a sunny day with cars, doing what they do, burning gasoline and putting out volatile organic compounds, for every degree increase in temperature, there's an increase of about 2 parts per billion in the Bay Area, and you can see that it's modeled in different areas around California, but about 2 parts per billion, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you look down at the middle or the bottom table 2 and 3, you can see that the number of respiratory symptoms that are associated with that small increase of 2 parts per billion, they're calling it a climate penalty, and the cost in terms of healthcare is pretty astronomical, and this is a very carefully done statistical study, so it gives a big, wide range there, but I think the takeaway message is easy to see. Having our cities and our urban areas be cooler, trees contributing to that, has a tremendous benefit in so many ways, and this is a way that I think most people are not aware of. I certainly wasn't. Next slide, please. And this, what a wonderful study. Up in Portland again, a researcher named Jeffrey Donovan is an economist. I highly recommend this to anybody who wants to look into this. Did some fascinating studies of urban trees and birth weight and crime, and finding very strong relationships between people who give birth in neighborhoods that are well treed, if you will, and they're healthier, they have better birth weight and fewer problems. Very strong association, and also with lower crime rates. And so that's a fascinating study. And on the right side of the slide there, you can see a number of the speaking points that I think you're probably all familiar with, but again, might be useful in your communications if you deal with politicians or out in the community, say you're doing tree plantings, etc. These are the kinds of talking points that I find extremely useful. I hope you do too. Next slide, please. So now that you guys, well, you know so much, and you have all of these different talking points and all these facts and figures, then the question is, are people listening? Are people willing to listen and take action, as Jilly talked about, in terms of responding to the drought and doing the right thing as far as keeping our landscape living? Next slide, please. And it turns out that most people are. This is about 75% of the public, and this comes from a survey done in about a dozen different large urban areas in the United States, asking people, particularly about water, but also about climate change, whether or not they were willing, to make some changes, to practice conservation, to maybe pay a little bit more in taxes or in water rates, to take care of their water and to reverse negative impacts of climate change. And again, the survey results, I think, are very telling in terms of showing us that people are willing. Most people are. There's always that 8% which are intractable. You'll never get through to them. But for the most part, people are willing and able to listen if we're able to get the message out to them. Next slide, please. Here, I was trying to find a worst case example in terms of drought, and the most recent one I'm sure you all have heard about is the Millennium Drought in Australia, Melbourne in particular. And I thought it was really interesting to see how this urban area, this large modern urban area, is responded to that drought. They made tremendous investments in recycled water, rain catchment, gray water, conservation. They focused on their trees, as Julie suggested, and this was the worst. They have 12 years worth of storage in their reservoirs, and they had almost a 12-year drought. It was a 10-year solid drought. But they made it through, started raining again. Unfortunately, as Julie mentioned, the drought stress, the long-term stress on those trees was devastating to a lot of their urban forests, and they realized that they're about 22% of their canopy cover is highly vulnerable and going to be gone in a few years because of age plus drought stress. So they're making a huge investment. Their response to this drought was to plant more trees, to take care of them, to diversify their urban forests, because the folks in Melbourne have a solid understanding of the benefits, the scientific benefits, the environmental and social benefits of those trees. So I just found that extremely inspiring, and would encourage anybody to go and learn about what Melbourne's doing. Next slide, please. Here are some of the things. These aren't slides from Melbourne. They could be from any number of your communities, I'm sure, but these are all low-impact design practices that Melbourne has put in place, and that I think speaks to what we all need to do in terms of transforming our existing landscape, which might have been put in the 1970s before a lot of these technologies were really popular, and a lot of opportunities for revitalizing our landscape and saving our trees. Next slide, please. And the very important step of taking an inventory of our landscapes wherever they might be, and prioritizing, with the solid understanding we need to take care of our long-term investment, our trees that are going to be there hopefully for, in some cases, hundreds of years, and certainly those that are most stressed, the young trees, they're going to take a few years of watering to get established, and it's really worth that investment. And so this is one view here of how to, really sort of during periods of extreme stress, as we're in now in many areas of the state, to prioritize and keep the stress as low as possible for our forest. Next slide, please. And yes, El Nino. Watching that, everyone's watching that very carefully. As Julie mentioned, it's no guarantee that we'll get tremendous rainfall, but it's a good sign historically, and we're all crossing our fingers in the water industry, that's for sure. So we'll watch that carefully. Again, rain or shine, it's important to always take care of our trees. And I guess if there's a single thought that comes to my mind I'd like to share, is that the trees are worth the water. Every bit as much as agriculture and other things that we rely on for a healthy life. So that's all I have. Next slide. That's my contact information, and please feel free to contact me. I can share any of this information. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dan. So before we go into our Q&A, I do just want to mention that all the PowerPoints and a recording of this online workshop will be made available on our website in the next 1 to 2 days. So we'll be following up with everybody with that information as soon as that's up on our websites. So now I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth, who is with the California Urban Forest Council, to facilitate any questions and answers that folks may have.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. We already have a couple of questions in the queue here. So, Julie, this one came through during your presentation, and the question is, are there any rebates for synthetic turf, and if not, why not?
I do not know of any. We do not rebate for synthetic turf through our program that's coming on board, and I do not know of any other rebates. They could exist. I just don't know about them. Some cities have actually made it a policy to not rebate for synthetic turf. I know City of Santa Rosa is one of them, and if you go on their website, you can read pretty clearly their reasoning, and I personally agree with it. Our department is neutral on artificial turf. However, I personally think it's a bad idea in most cases, just because it's plastic, and then it doesn't have any environmental benefits that plants produce, like living soil and oxygen and so on. And it is a petroleum product that has to be disposed of at some point in the future, and it gets hot, and there's questionable health issues. So I'm sorry, but I'm not the person to advocate for it. There's probably a time and a place, but I think most cities, if they have taken, made a policy, I'm thinking they're not going to pay for it. But I honestly couldn't tell you. There may be some. I just don't know.
Okay. The next question I have here is the rule of thumb for watering trees still 10 gallons of water per inch of trunk diameter per month?
Is that for me?
This one's just a general question.
Okay.
I can even take this one if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Generally, that is what we advise. There are other standards out there as well, but this is sort of the most widely accepted standard. Okay, we have someone who asked if the slides will be made available. They will be made available. They'll be on the website, and we can send you that information. And then, let's see. That looks like that's all we've received for questions at this point. We can wait a few more minutes and see if some additional questions come in. In the meantime, this is a good opportunity to announce, if you enjoyed looking at some of Dr. Jeffrey Donovan's research, we're actually going to be hosting a workshop on Thursday in Modesto. It's a free workshop, and Dr. Jeffrey Donovan is our keynote speaker, and he'll be presenting some of his information in addition to several other speakers who can talk to everyone about some of the case studies of what they've done in their cities, and this is a little bit more. Here are our upcoming events list here. I think it's the other way.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like we did get another question in, and this is, were the issues or problems surrounding the use and maintenance of drip and microspray systems in a commercial municipal ever discussed during the creation of ordinance mandates? These systems routinely are not able to be kept functioning without the loss of plants by the time a problem is detected.
Well, actually, we did have a lot of input from the irrigation industry, from the manufacturers. We had a couple of phone calls with the Irrigation Association and their members. Rainbird and Toro and Hunter have all weighed in and have been important stakeholders in the process. I think there are issues with drip and microspray, but however, the equipment is a lot better than it used to be. And high output spray is not a really good option because of the water loss. You end up the older sprays, if they're not installed correctly, you can waste usually 60% of the water that they're putting out to run off or overspray. So I think it's still an evolving field, and we're trying to keep up with all the demands and all the different situations. It's very hard to come up with a set of rules that will make all stakeholders happy and still achieve the goals. And so we've tried our very best. We did listen to the landscape industry. We had hundreds of people give comments before the update and after the draft was released, so we tried our best to incorporate those changes. But I think the point is the new equipment is far better than it was even 10, 20 years ago, and hopefully the manufacturers will continue to innovate because that's what they do. They're really good at it, and come up with solutions.
Okay. Another question is, Julie mentioned rebates coming soon. Does that mean maybe in a month or two?
Well, locally, many water suppliers already have rebate programs. Because of the drought, I know a lot of them have gone through their money quite quickly and are out of money. So, yes, locally there are still rebate programs going on. On the statewide initiative, the rebates are coming soon, I think, with the idea of fall and winter planting. So check that website as a turf replacement initiative, and it's really easy to find. You can click on the link when you get the PowerPoint from Shani and her group, or you can just go to the DWR homepage and just type in turf initiative or turf in the search bar, and it'll take you straight to that. And if you follow that, I think right now the rebate information is not up, but it will be coming up in the next few days or a couple weeks. So just kind of check back on that and see what's happening. I know some of the money is earmarked for disadvantaged communities in the San Joaquin Valley due to the groundwater status, because they're in areas where they're highly impacted by lack of groundwater and the overdraft, and of course no storage of surface water is left in a lot of places. So some of that money is earmarked specifically for the San Joaquin Valley, and I'll mention that Thursday when I'm in Modesto. The rest of the money is earmarked throughout the state. So they are coming, and I think I know a lot of people will take advantage of it. So don't dawdle, because I'm sure that all the locals have found as soon as the money is offered for rebates, it's gone. That happened to me. I was going to try to take advantage of a local rebate, and the money was gone before I could do anything. So just keep track and check frequently, please.
All right. The next question I have here, I have 12 mature trees in my small 7,500 square foot yard. If I water daily, I will either be fined or I will lose my trees. What should I do? My redwoods are already dying.
Well, well, unfortunately, redwoods are not very well suited for most of the state, other than the north central coast. And when we've planted them in the Central Valley and the foothills, the Sierra foothills, and Southern California, they're not well suited. And because we've had such dry winters, they've been stressed all winter. And you know, you can try your best to save them. Probably not watering every single day. I'm sure that there's some tree people that are more experts at this than I am, but I would say deep water occasionally, and see if that improves their health.
I can add a little bit to that. I managed the San Diego Zoo, the landscape at the San Diego Zoo, the watering systems there, and we did have a stand of redwoods. Really not the best place to have them in San Diego on a dry slope, but as Julie mentioned, you know, deep watering. You could, you know, certainly want to give them a nice deep drink. If you've got a water budget, in other words, you know, depending on the water agency that serves you, I certainly don't want to go into penalty, but just like any kind of a budget, you want to look at how much water you have, carefully apply that. If you can use your water meter to measure how many gallons you're applying, give those redwoods a nice deep drink, you know, once a month if that's all you can do it, or once every couple of weeks. But certainly don't, you know, you don't want that, you know, the precious resource of those trees to you know, to go away or to die. So nice deep watering. You don't want to water. There are very few things that you would ever water every day.
Okay. Our next question is, how can the community push for implementations mentioned by Dan, such as rain gardens and pocket wetlands? Who do you go to in your municipality, and how do you present the ideas?
Okay, I'll take that. Yeah, I find that the planning departments or the building department, well, you know, it depends on the individual municipality, but whichever department in your local city or town is most innovative, sometimes it is the building department, permitting department, sometimes the planning department, maybe all of the above. Sometimes you'll have politicians, et cetera, that are excited about that. You might be able to work. We've been very successful in MARIN working with various nonprofits. The Master Gardeners are an excellent example of a group. Other kinds of advocacy groups in the community, schools, educational institutions of different kinds, are all really great ways to go. If it's a new kind of technology like whether pocket parks or just having runoff from the parking lots go into the planters instead of into the storm drains, if that's relatively new to the community, I always find that pilot projects are a great way to go. Start small, something visible that people are interested in, and then kind of let it catch on.
I would add, look at what kind of guidance has already been produced. LA County and I think the city of Santa Monica have some good guidelines. There is a demonstration rain garden at the animal shelter on Bradshaw in Sacramento County. And look, San Francisco, I believe, has some information. So if you look and search for some of this information that has already been accepted by a municipality somewhere in California, you can show that to say, look, they're making it work, because there may be some people in city government that are nervous that it could be a mosquito hazard or some other kind of health and safety hazard or cause flooding or whatever. They're worried about the liability. And if you can show them other places within California that have made it work, then they will probably be a lot more amenable to standing behind a project like that. And with the landscape ordinance, we are actually encouraging even more on-site water retention than before, because if we can capture a lot of our rain coming off the roofs and keeping it into the soil in our yard, then we don't have to start irrigating as early in the spring. And that's good deep watering. It'll recharge the groundwater table and shorten the irrigation season.
Okay, thank you. Well, it looks like we're about out of time. So before we go, I just want to mention that if you have any questions about the CivicSpark program or any of the logistics, you can get in touch with me. And my email address is projectmanager, one word, @caufc.org. With that, I'll turn it back to Shani.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks again to both of our speakers that were able to provide some very timely updates and valuable resources. And thanks to all of you who tuned in today to learn more about this topic. We hope that you found it useful. And again, just to remind everyone that we do have several more online workshops as well as our in-person workshop that will be held in Modesto this Thursday. So we hope to see as many of you out. Please encourage any of your colleagues or other individuals that you work with in your communities to attend one of the events. And the link, again, is up on your screen now. And we'll be following up with everyone the next couple of days with the recording and link to where the PowerPoints are. So I hope everyone has a great day and take care.